Thank you, Siri. And dear friends, these are quite brutal images on the screen behind me right now. As this video shows, 2022 has been quite a year, and we are not through. This is going to be with us for a long time to come, and it's bringing a very serious picture on the whole development of Europe for Norway as an energy nation, as for any political cooperation. This brutal attack has caused untold suffering on people in Ukraine. Last Friday, we spoke to all the municipalities in Norway. Basically, all municipalities, 100% in Norway, have received refugees from Ukraine, north to south, east to west. And we had to tell them that, as we see the figures, you have to plan for exactly the same number next year, which can be in the league of another 40,000. It's the biggest flux of people we've had since the Second World War. And of course, we are just a lot less hit than others who are in the midst of the continent. Then we have, as the images also shown, seen the consequences of the climate crisis, including the devastated floods in Pakistan. I was with the Pakistani Prime Minister at the COP, and it made quite an impression sitting next to him, seeing his images on the video screen on what it meant when 30 million people lost their homes. Just unbelievable. The UN Secretary General warned us of the dangers ahead. There is still hope, but we need decisive actions on so many fronts. So, being an energy nation, a climate-oriented policy nation, is a tough mix. But we believe that there is hope in that mix, and that there is a purpose for us to pursue. This is the backdrop. So let me then also say that 2022 gave us some inspirational illustrations of what I would call the value of togetherness. President Zelensky, who I visited in July and with whom I speak quite regularly, we've seen the cooperation between countries in Europe. People were kind of counting on split in Europe. Putin was counting on split in Europe. He has seen the opposite, even though conditions for countries are quite dire. So, friends, dear Equinor and all partners, let's come to the event today. 50 years ago this summer, Statoil was created by a vote in the Norwegian Parliament. And we then created a mechanism by which the wealth generated on the Norwegian continental shelf would really belong to the Norwegian population, not only the one living now, but also the ones to come. Looking at this assembly, I'm sure that many of you have been at 50-year anniversary celebrations. I think we are on average age, most of you have passed that age. And you know what such parties are like. The speeches we give at 50 anniversaries, this kind of midlife, is often looking back with a retrospective element. Achievements over the last decades are recognized and celebrated. But, you know, if you really want to make a good speech on the 50 year, you have to also make the point that there is so much ahead. For you, my dear friend, turning 50. Abundance of vitality and everything which can come. Now, and then you make some kind of jokes about perhaps a bit more jogging and healthy lifestyle, and you will do fine. Slimming the waistline, keeping up with the times. So, you know, in a way, my speech will be no different. Because, Mr. Director, I think that, Anders, there's a lot to talk about of this fantastic history. It's really an industrial chapter which is very impressive. It's clear for us that this creation 50 years ago is a critical turning point in the history of our country. Along with the basic principles underpinning the production of oil and gas on the shelf, the creation of Statoil also initiated an industrial adventure of transformational importance for the Norwegian welfare. It led to the emergence of world-class engineering, important in Norway, but also far beyond Norway. And at 50, we believe that Equinor remains at the forefront of this community. You are still not only performing well, but you are excelling at complex operations in the North Sea, which I have the pleasure of visiting from time to time. And then you are in the midst of the transition to the green future that we have to move towards. I'm sometimes meeting people who say, why don't you leave Equinor in the fossil age and split it up and create something new for the new age, because the future is renewable and green and everything in opposition to what was. I firmly believe that's the wrong approach, because the industrial perspective of this is the transition, and that you build on the skills and build on the dynamism and set the directions on moving forward in the right direction. Some say that you are set in your ways, but I believe that those who know you, we recognize that there is curiosity at 50, and your commitments to staying relevant is being tested every day in the markets, but also by an ownership which is still strongly public. As a politician, I've had many encounters with Equinor over the decade, and I've felt that I always meet with this strategic industrial vision to be part of the solution to the challenges that we are facing. I remember a year ago I was visiting in Stavanger, one of the research labs, and I met people standing there doing a lot of cutting-edge exploration of what carbon capture and storage could mean. And I was asking one of them, my age, what's your education, what's your background? Now, he was an engineer and he had been in oil and gas. That was really where he excelled. But now he was on this new chapter. And obviously he was doing well on this new chapter because he knew the previous chapters. So I think this is really the way we have to go. So friends, in keeping with this 50th anniversary party speech, let me share a personal detail from my bedroom. Not all of them, but one. At my desk next to my bed, I bought in New York last time Bill Gates' last book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. I recommend it because it's an easy read, but very insightful in explaining mechanisms that I think you really can share. It's Christmas is 4 weeks ahead, so you can offer this especially to the younger generation. Bill Gates argues that the green transition will be difficult, but not impossible. And he takes, as often in such settings, an optimistic yet realistic view, arguing forcefully for the potential of collective action, technological innovation, and massive investment. Complex but possible. And he illustrates this argument with the extraordinary reduction in the cost of renewable energy that we have observed over the last year. How do we bring that to scale? How do we make it operational? How do we build the necessary grid? It's complex, but it is feasible. He argues that we need best brains and the most capable companies to embrace that challenge. And we need political leadership, which is at least as bold as we were when we created Statoil as a community 50 years ago. Norway has, and I believe there is broad support, committed to reducing emissions by at least 55% by 2030. And we are gearing up to deliver on that commitment. We will implement a just climate policy by increasing our carbon tax to 200 euros, 2,000 kroner, per ton by 2030. And in the budget which we are about to land, there is a 21% increase from this year to next year to keep the pace. So industry will know that this cost is coming, and the incentive to move outside CO2 will be strong. We will align our policies and targets by making an annual climate plan as part of our national budget, counting tons as we count money. And we have high ambitions for moving into perhaps the most prosperous and potential new source of energy, offshore wind, by setting the target for 30 gigawatts by 2040. And it has to start now. And I think that's what Minister Terje Aasland and I work on now. A lot, Terje. There's a lot of work here. And regjeringskonferanser are now filled with this because this is partly something we know what to do and partly new work. We are, I believe, in pole position to develop a market for hydrogen with suppliers covering the whole value chains. Tomorrow I will meet with Chancellor Scholz in Berlin, and it is fascinating. I think it's worthwhile kind of reminding the Norwegian audience how much Germany is now in transition, how much they are focusing on hydrogen, how much they are focusing on a new industrial partnership with Norway on these issues. We are a world-leading nation on CCS, with Longship paving the way for CCS as a crucial decarbonization tool for industry. And Jens, you were not wrong by saying that this was a moon landing. I'm proud, that we had the Prime Minister who set that target. Because if you don't set that high ambition, you get nowhere. And when I visited out there in Øygarden a couple of weeks ago, I said, it's a pretty nice moon. If that's the moon, So what we went for in the first line was to succeed carbon capture, and we succeeded the capture. Now we're about to succeed the potential of storage. And speaking about our government area, we are used to deal within governments that there are license applications from oil companies wanting to drill for oil. Now we are handling applications for drilling for reservoir for CO2. Pretty much the same business, but it is still showing that we are moving forward. We are paving the way for a transition on the continental shelf and for land-based industry. And the purpose here is, of course, to reduce emissions while creating a new generation of jobs. Friends, there are those who argue, again, that we should abandon energy companies and look for the new wine. That you are, in a way, the relic of the past, that you offer nothing of relevance for the future we seek. I, again, could not disagree more. If the last 6 months have taught us anything, it is how important reliable energy supplies really are. There can be no effective response to climate change that does not simultaneously address the need for affordable energy, whether in Norway, Europe, or globally. And we have seen the vulnerability of scaling down fossil fuel energy before you have created the potential for the new renewables. And I think it's unfair to blame Germany that they are in this transition because, nobody could have expected that all these BCMs of Russian gas would simply disappear as a part of political, dramatic, and very sad choices. Russian manipulation of European gas markets over the last year illustrates this like perhaps no other experience in the past. Meant to sow division in Europe, but thus far it has proven to be exactly the opposite. And I believe what has happened has perhaps made Equinor the most important company in Europe these days. It puts a heavy responsibility on your shoulders. When Germany now has filled up the gas storage, and Europe is at plus 90%, as Fatih Birol explained to me just an hour ago from IEA. That's partly thanks to the increase of export from the Norwegian continental shelf, an 8% increase, bringing our export to 122 BCMs, which I think is, from an engineer perspective, a very admirable achievement. And I tell my partners, it's not me selling gas. We provide the licenses and the regulations for the companies, but inside that framework, the companies have been able to perform really extraordinarily well. It has affected the first year of my tenure as Prime Minister. There have been a few other issues as well, but this one is there. There has been a lot of attention to what Norway will do in this situation, and we have been now portrayed as a trusted and reliable partner. I believe that is a well-earned description, and the tribute goes to the companies. I've spoken to countless colleagues and journalists, and I really see that there is now a completely new and invigorated approach to what the activity organization on the shelf, taxation practices, how we organize this sector, great interest in how we can play a role in this new industrial development. So we welcome this interest, and it is natural given the situation our continent is in. It is unlikely to go away soon. So I would also like to say, as I tell my partners, because there is a focus, as Siri Lill said, that Norway is making a lot of money on this. But let me make it very clear. High and unstable energy prices in Europe is not in Norway's interest. And 3 reasons for that. It leads to explosive electricity prices in Norway, South Norway in particular. They hurt industries, our partners in Europe. That's bad for us. And they create social tensions inside countries that are our political allies. We have open channels and direct contact with the European Commission and with European partners. And we make every effort to share our experiences on how do markets work, how can we really make these markets work for the benefit of industries and households. So we engage our partners in Europe. We have contributed, I believe, to a more realistic debate on how we can manage this unstable situation. So while this discussion continues, I think it's fair to say that the complexities of the energy market is increasingly recognized. Be careful not to rock that boat too much, because it can create deeper problems. We see this in the proposals coming from the European Commission, including a growing realization that high prices are a symptom of something, namely insufficient supply. And be careful not to stimulate demand of something where the supply is limited. I think that is understood, although very complex. It's our view that the single most contribution Norway can make is to ensure a high and stable level of production from the Norwegian continental shelf. Without this, situation would have been worse. And I would then, of course, like to extend to you sitting here my gratitude, but also to all those men and women working out there on the platforms, on the land installations, for the tremendous work they do. You are literally contributing to keeping the lights on in Europe. I know that many people out there and also relatives are concerned when there is obvious sabotage against pipelines, as we saw in the North, in the Baltic Sea. We take this very seriously. This has always been a priority for Norwegian governments, but we have taken additional steps to step up that security. We have done it, and we have done it alongside our allies, sailing with us in the North Sea, providing and also demonstrating our readiness to secure people working there and secure our 9,000 kilometers of pipelines. Now, Dr. Fatbirol, we met Executive Director of the IEA before you became here, and we spoke about the world energy outlook, and as you make very eloquent remarks, the next decade will be critical. If we take the right steps now, we can make the system, this journey, more sustainable towards a more sustainable future, dynamic, and we can get there faster. We are at a historic point in time when economic, climate, and security priorities move in the same direction. And that's a tragic, in a way, paradox of the Ukraine war, is that it may also push, in a way, a positive agenda, namely a more speedily transition to the renewable energy sources. This is promising. We can create new opportunities and find new solutions. So we have to accelerate and scale up equitable energy transitions, provide opportunities for decent jobs, and improve energy access for billions of people while achieving significant emissions or reductions. When Dr. Brundtland presented our Common Future report, one key message was that there are still billions of people lacking electricity. And there was a quote in the speeches that Gahr gave, and I helped drafting some of those speeches, which went along the same line, this line, that how can we tell the Prime Minister of India that, sorry, there is no more space in the wastebaskets left for you, we have filled them up. And before he or she can provide electricity to a growing population, bringing them out of poverty, climate change is a kind of remote thing out there. So providing energy to these billions is critically from many dimensions. And I've taken up one assignment here, personally, to co-chair the Global Leadership Council of the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. This is an initiative tended to mobilize resources to support energy transition in the Global South from fossil to renewable. From the local farmer who can move from the diesel aggregate to the solar panels in the key emerging countries. And as Secretary General Guterres says, if we don't succeed in these countries, we are doomed. We have to emphasize on these countries. The project, the ambition of this alliance is to create about 150 million new jobs in these countries who will do the transition, and to reduce emission by 4 gigatons. And just to remind you, the world has an emission of about 50 gigatons a year, Norway about 50 million. So succeeding out there is critically important. We need to expand energy access to the 1 billion people who currently live in the dark. So, dear friends, these are big issues. Equinor cannot fix all of them, but I believe Equinor will help fix many. I will return to the 50th anniversary we are celebrating today. 50 extraordinary years, and we are proud of your achievements. And as we all will participate in the next 50 years, and we will meet at 100, I look forward to seeing continued transformation from a petroleum company to an energy company with a broader remit and a strong sense of social responsibility and a commitment to realizing a low-carbon future. And for all 5-point-something Norwegians to be proud that this company is still part of being our company, and we are proud of that. Congratulations, and thank you for your attention.